Hey guys, Adam here with 80 Proof Goods. Today I want to take a second to talk about leather thickness, what leather thickness to buy for certain projects, and which ones I use for my particular projects. It's a question that I've been getting kind of often the past couple of weeks, so I wanted to address it and just kind of give you guys a little bit of a tip on how to select the leather and the weight. Now, first thing you need to know is that leather thickness is not measured in inches or really millimeters, it's measured in ounces. If you see something like 3.5 ounces of leather or 5 ounces of leather, it's actually referring to how thick the leather is going to be. Now, depending on what project you're working on, you want to keep in mind the thickness of the leather because it's going to make a difference to the final result. Now, for me personally, for most of the projects here at 80 Proof Goods, I use a 3.5 to 4 ounce leather called Minerva. Now, this Minerva series is an Italian full grain leather. I only use full grain leather here, and I find personally that 3.5 to 4 ounces is the sweet spot for what I like to work with. Now, there is a matter of personal preference that gets built in here, but there's also some guidelines you kind of want to follow depending on the project. For example, 3.5 to 4 ounce leather is about 1.2 to 1.6 millimeters thick. So it's not a super thick leather, but it's also not so thin that it's going to tear or hold a shape. If you're working with leather and you want to make a belt, that's something that you probably want to beef it up a little bit and use a thicker leather. For example, my belts, I use 8 to 10 ounce leather. Now, an 8 to 10 ounce leather is 3.2 to 4 millimeters thick, and that's, again, just a personal preference. You can go thicker. Some people like to do a 12 to 13 or 13 to 14 ounce leather for their belts. Bags is another thing to keep in mind. If you're making bags, you might want to go with maybe a 5.5 to 6 ounce leather, just because a bag is going to have a lot of weight inside of it once it's all put together, and a bag definitely needs a little bit more strength so that it's not breaking through the seams when you have it loaded up. If you're just starting off in leathercraft, you're probably going to be looking at making, say, wallets at first, just because wallets are such widely available in patterns and templates and free options that you can kind of wet your hand and see if you actually like leathercraft. So for wallets, 3.5 to 4 ounce leather is a perfect thickness or a perfect weight for a leather to use in that particular project. Card slots, on the other hand, can get really thick when they start to stack up on each other. That's when you start to think about skiving. That's where thinner leathers might come into play, like a 1 to 2 ounce or a 2.5 to 3 ounce. 2 ounces is probably a pretty good thickness when it comes to card slots, but it's not really practical to order a whole bunch of different thicknesses of leathers. For me, these hides that you see up above me and the leather hotel I've showed before is pretty much all 3.5 to 4 ounce leather, with the exception of my belt straps. So when I'm working on card slots, I actually start to skive it down and thin the leather where those panels will start to stack up and get too thick for the project. You won't really want a really thick wallet sticking out of your back pocket, because once you start putting cards in it, it's just going to multiply and get thicker and thicker and more uncomfortable. So 3.5 to 4 ounces for most of my leather hides, and then when I need to thin them down, I use my French skiver. Now, there's definitely different skiving methods that you can explore out there, and I'll make a video on that later on at some point. But French skivers is a really easy way to thin out the leather for pieces that'll stack up to reduce some of that bulk. And that way you can purchase one size, maybe 3.5 to 4 ounces if that's what you find works for you, and then you can thin it down on your own without having to purchase multiple hides and different thicknesses for different parts of your projects. That's where you want to start to be a little bit more cost effective. Now, when you go to purchase your leather, there should be an option for dry splitting. Now, dry splitting is essentially a service that most, if not all, reputable leather suppliers will offer in order to thin down the leather hide that you're purchasing. Now, in my case, the Minerva options I buy are from Rocky Mountain Leather Supply, and they come as thick as 5.5 ounces. That's the thickest that you can get for Minerva. But I like to order 3.5 to 4 ounces, so I add their dry splitting service. They'll basically take the hides that I order, send it through a machine that will shave off the backside or the flesh side of the leather to thin it down to whatever I specify. So it thins it down so that way when you get it in the mail, you don't have to skive down an entire hide. So keep that in mind when you're purchasing leather. You should be selecting the dry splitting service that they offer if you're looking for a specific size or weight of leather. I hope this video helped you out. If you're starting out on leathercraft, my recommendation right off the bat is 3.5 to 4 ounce leather, and then grab some kind of skiving method to make thinner options for different card slots and different aspects of your projects. If you want to start out making belts or sheaths or something like that that requires a little bit more strength but also flexibility, 8 to 10 ounce leather is perfect for that as well. Just my 2 cents. Obviously, every crafter's got their personal preference. If this video helped you out, a like and a subscribe goes a long way to help build a small channel like mine, and I hope to see you in the next one.